This conference
This
will now be
conference will now
recorded.
be recorded. All right, so in the previous session, we understand about the variables, right? So what are the local variables, instance variables, and static variables, how they are different from one with other, right? And in today's session, let's understand a bit more about instance context to static context, okay? And further to that, let's understand about the static classes as well. Right, so instance versus static. Let me create a class. So here I have an example, instance versus static example class. Right. So what does it mean? Instance and static context. When I say context, so that can be a block of, that can be a block, that can be a class, or that can be a method. Okay, so here if you look at the main method, if you start with main method, the main method is a static method, right? The main method is a static method. So this particular area, so whatever you write over here, that is in the context of static method, that is in the context of static method, that is in the context of static method, the static context. Okay, now so in the same class I'm writing a method, I'm writing a method, simple method, m1 method. Okay, so this method does not have any static keyword, this method does not have any static keyword, so this is not in the static context, this is instance context. We call this as instance context. So this is an instance method. We can say this is an instance method. This is an instance method, and the main method is what? Static method. Main method is what? Static method. And of course, can I write my own static method? Of course, I can do that. Void m2. So now my method is a static method. M2 is static method. Right, so this is a static context. This is instance context. This is instance context. So this is static method. Right. In the similar way, I can also define some blocks. I can also define some blocks. So just I am not giving anything else. Just I am giving something like this. That's it. No keywords, nothing. Just I opened a bracket and closed the bracket. Also I'm doing this static. Okay, also I'm doing this static. So just opening the bracket and closing the bracket, and just before that I have a keyword. What is that? Static. Okay, so these are just a blocks, okay, not a methods. So this block is known as static block. This is known as static block, and this is known as what? Instance block. This is known as instance block. Okay, so what is the point that you understand now? So we do have instance methods, instance blocks, as well as static methods and static blocks, static methods and static blocks. So that's what we are trying to understand, instance versus static. So how these are going to work, first thing, let me add just print statements on each and every thing. Okay, this is I am main method, I am main method, and here I will write print statements that I am one method, I am one method, and here I'll say I'm a static m2 method. I'm a static m2 method. What about this guy? So I am an instance block. I'm an instance block. What about this guy? So this guy is a static block. So I'm a static block. So I have added print statements to understand the flow first thing. Okay, to understand the flow. I'm just adding print statements in each and everything. Okay, now I would like to run this. Now can you guys guess what is the output for this? What is the output for this if I run this? Can you guys give me any guesses? You have any guesses? Ping me in the chat box. So what could be the output here? What could be the output here? Nothing. All right. So I'm just executing. See the output. So in general, you might be expecting I am main method. I'm just it will print I am main method. But just look at the output. Where is my console? So here is my console. Did I run this? Okay, see here. Here is my console output. Drag it to here. So let me minimize this stuff. Now see the output. Okay, just you can see the output now. What is the output? It is printing I am a static block and I am a main method. So meaning what? Before executing main method, I am main method. This is main method execution logic, right? Before executing main method, the static block code is executed or not? The static block code is executed or not? So that is what. So if it is a static block, so no object is required. If it is a static block, no object is required. Okay, so object is not required. uh, no more dependencies. Okay, so what JVM does is it executes upfront while loading the class into the JVM. Okay, JVM class loader subsystem. It starts its execution of the static blocks. If you have static blocks in your program, those static blocks gets execute uh, okay, prior to your main method execution, or you can say like it executes first always, because it starts its execution while loading the class itself, all the static block. So if you have any logic to write and execute before actually executing your main logic, okay, so you can use this static block. You can use this static block initialization. All right, so I'll show you some predefined examples where you have the static blocks. Okay, where you have some static blocks. For now, so you just understand that. Okay, so the static blocks executes first. Okay, the next thing, can I have multiple static blocks? Can I write multiple static blocks or only one? See, do you see any error? No, right? So I have another static block. I am another static block. I am another static block. Now run this. So can I expect this statement also in the output? I'm a static block and I'm another static block. And which executes first, which executes last, that goes based on the order. That's all, from top to bottom. Okay, the static blocks. So what are the point? So here, okay, we can define static blocks. We can define static blocks. Static blocks. How do we define? Just a static with the bracket. That's all. So here the logic goes. Right, so static blocks, what is the advantage of static blocks? So we can perform any initialization logic or global initialization, meaning that it doesn't require the objects stuff. Okay, we never care about the object. So at a global level, if you want to initialize anything, you can perform any global initialization before actually uh, main method execution starts. Or like, so it executes the static block code executes static block get executes when during the class loading itself. So as soon as your class is loaded, the static block code is going to execute. Okay, it doesn't have any dependencies, so it executes that static block. Now the next thing is, okay, if you compare here, we can define as many number of static blocks as we want. As many number of static blocks, we can define as many number of static blocks as we want. It's up to our requirement. Okay, right. What is the order? So the order of static blocks execution is from top to bottom. That's all. Right, that's what we understand. Now let's continue still further. So if you see static blocks, where we are understanding static blocks. What about static methods, guys? What about static methods? Okay, we can define static methods, right? So we can define static methods as well. We can define static methods as well. Of course, main method is also a static method. Main method is also the static method. Main method is also a static method. Main method is also a static method. What is the advantage of the static method? What is the advantage of the static method? Again, when I say static, so it doesn't care about the object. We don't really need to create an object to access and execute the static methods, static blocks. Okay, so we can define static methods as well. Of course, main method is also a static method. So we can execute, okay, we can call, or we can access, or we can call static methods. We can access static methods using class name itself directly. And we never care about what object. You understand? We can access, or we can call the static methods using the class name itself. Okay, we can access the static methods using the class name, and we don't need, okay, we don't need uh, any instance. Okay, we don't need any instance. We don't need any instance. Understand? We don't need any instance. In general, to call your method, right, we need an instance, right? If it is instance method only. For static methods, you can call them directly using the class name, and we don't need any instance. See here, I have a static method m2. I have a static method m2. Okay, so I have a static method m2. Do I have any other static methods? No. Okay, I have only one method, static method. Let me call this method static method m2. So if you are calling that static method from another static context, even the class name is also not required. So directly you can call. So simply m2. So I'm calling from the main method, which is also a static. So here m2 is also a static method. So another static context, you can access that directly, even you don't, because both the methods are within the same class, right? My m2 method is exist in the same class where my main method is. So I don't really need even the class name. But when you go out of it and you wanted to access this m2 method, then you have to use the class name, right? So let me write one more class, new class. Okay, test static methods. Okay, so I'm creating another class. This is another class. So here in this class, I wanted to access that particular m2 method. Where is my m2 method? My m2 method is, okay, in the other example. What is the class name? Instance versus static, right? Instance versus static example dot. I can access m2 method directly because it is a static. That's it. I don't really need to create object for this particular class. So I don't really need to create an object for this particular a class. Directly I can access using the class name. That is the major advantage that we get with the static. Okay, so that's the point. What is the point is we can access static methods using the class name itself. We don't need any instance. Okay, so for suppose if we are accessing the static method within the same class from another method, we are accessing if we are accessing the static method from another static method. If we are accessing the static method from another static method within the same class, okay, then we don't even need class name. We can simply call the method using the method. That's all. Hope you understand this point. Okay. So if we are into the same class, so m2 is in same class, and main method is in the same class. So I can call this directly. It's a direct access. If you are out of this class and you wanted to access this m2 method, then you need class name where my m2 method is available. Okay, the class name dot m2. Class name dot m2. Hope you understand. Any questions so far? Do you have any questions so far? Any questions? All right. Okay. So continuing to this. Okay. So note. What is the note here is, however, so we can access the static methods using object also, using instance also. If you have instance, if you have object, still you can access it. So for all the instances of the class, or the static members are available. Okay, the static members are available. When I say static members, they can be static method, static variable, whatever. Static members by default, okay, by default static members are available for all the instances of a class. Is this point clear? By default, all the static members are available for all the instances of class. Okay. Now, so let's see this. I wanted to create an object instance versus this one. Say for example, I'm creating an object, new instance versus. Now I created an object, and on top of object, my object also I can access m2 method or not. See this. This is what the point says that. Okay. So ex is an instance of this particular class. Using that instance, I can call my m2 method. M2 method is a not instance method. It is a static method, but still I can access it. You understand this? So we can access okay, we can access all the static members using the instances. Hope you got that point. Now go back to this. So let's understand about the instance blocks. Okay. So when this instance block will execute, when this is going to execute the instance block, static blocks get executed irrespective of the instance, but the instance block executes when you are instantiating this particular class. So for example, I'm instantiating my class here. Instance versus static example is equal new, okay, instance versus static example. So I have created object to my class. Right? I have created object to my class. Now see, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just creating object. And now look at the output. So earlier output was what? I'm a static block, I'm another static block, and I'm main method. 3 lines of code we have seen, 3 lines of statements we have seen in the output. I'm running this again now. Okay, I'm running this again now. On as Java application. See that now I'm a static block, I am another static block, I'm a main method. Okay, I'm a static M2 method. From where this is coming up? Because you are calling this M2 method. As you are calling this M2 method, so this is a method call, right? So control jumps from here to where? So to here. So this is going to print I am a static M2 method. Then after this line number 5, line number 6 will execute. Line number 6 is a instantiation process, object creation, right? So as part of whenever you are creating object, then all the instance blocks gets executed, and all the instance blocks get executed. See here, I am an instance block is executed or not? It is printed. I am an instance block. I am an instance block. This is an instance block, and this instance block gets executed when you are instantiating an object, when you are creating an object, right? So that's the point here. So instance blocks, okay, instance block. Okay, so this is about static block. So here instance block, okay, instance blocks. So here this is about static block. This is about static block. All right. When instance blocks get executed, okay, so this is to this if you have any logic, okay, so to perform any additional logic during the object creation, during the object initialization, okay, you can say object creation. Okay, to perform any additional logic during the object creation, we can create instance blocks. We can create instance blocks. We can create instance blocks. We can create instance blocks to perform any additional logic during the object creation. Okay, and again we can define any number of instance blocks. So all the instance blocks get executed whenever you are creating an object. Say here I have one instance block. Let me have one more instance block here. Another instance block. Run this and see. So expecting what? This line also should get print. I'm an instance block, I'm an another instance block. So both are executed, right? So both instance blocks are executed when I'm creating object. So if you comment this line, you don't see these 2 lines will print. The instance blocks will never execute because you are not instantiating. That's all. Hope this gives you better clarity about the instance blocks and the static blocks. Any questions till now? Any questions? Are you following? Good. Okay. Okay, so point to point, it like so we're getting into more details. So when you are looking at everything in a single chart, you might get confused. So be clear, right? So instance blocks and static blocks. We understand instance blocks and static blocks. And where is my instance method? So here is my instance method. So to access my instance method, definitely I need instance. Without instance, I cannot call my M1 method. See here directly, I cannot make a call because this is instance method and instance is required. Okay, so to access instance methods, okay, to access instance methods, static methods. Okay, so here I'm talking about instance methods. I'm talking about instance methods. We can define static methods, we can define instance methods. All right, so instance method, we must have an object. We must have an object to access instance methods. We must have object to access instance methods. This is compulsory. We must have an object to access instance methods. We must have an object to access instance methods. And then so we can define any number of instance methods, that's up to the requirement, or we can define any number of static methods. Okay, there is no limit. We can define any number of instance methods. Right. Now let me let me understand about the variables. So how the variables are going to work. Now say for example, I have one variable here, integer variable, integer x, and I have one more static variable here, integer y. Okay, I have two variables now. So I'm trying to access that variables, static variable in the static area. So in the static area, I'm accessing y here, and in the instance method, can I access my instance variable, which is what x. So we know already this is instance variable. This is what static variable we discussed yesterday, right? Static variable, instance variable, and static variables. So now, so I wanted to access these variables. So m1, this m2 is what? Static. So I wanted to access y over here. This is instance block. Okay, so I wanted to access x here. So this is what, again, instance block only. This is a static block. This is a static block. All right. Let me save this. Okay, so what is the output that you expect? So anyhow, if it is a if it goes with the default values, what are the default values for integer? The default value for integer is what? 0, right? So you can see all zeros. You can see all zeros, no confusion. Okay. Now I wanted to initialize these x and y. I wanted to initialize this x and y, and I wanted to increment this. All right. So here m1, I wanted to increment this x plus plus. Okay, x plus plus. So here m2, I wanted to do y plus plus. So here again I'll do. Okay, so to avoid confusion, just I'm keeping this extra bracket. Okay, so I'm using post increment, right? I'm using post increment. I'm using post increment here. Y plus plus. Now tell me outputs. So what is the output that you can expect? What are the outputs that you can expect here? So here I have instance ex dot x. Okay. Okay. So now, can I call the x directly over here? No, right? Because x is my instance variable, and you are part of static context. Okay, but here x I am directly calling without instance. Okay, just one another important point, pay attention. So here I am accessing x directly because m1 method is what? Instance method. Variable x is what? Instance variable. So I can access directly. Y is what? Static variable. And what is this method? Static method. So you can access directly. But if you want to access non-static member, instance member from the static context, you need an instance. Without instance, you cannot access it. Okay, but you can access if you want, you can access. Okay, so this is what my x. Okay, x is what no reverse. I wanted to do it reverse. Not this one. In the instance context, I wanted to access y. Okay. So why to access a static variable from the instance context, you don't need instance, you can access directly. But reverse is not true. Are you trying to get the point? So another important point, this is important. While working, people get confused with these errors, so they try to access directly, but it gives error. Okay. So important note is what we can access static members. Methods are variables, static members from non-static context. Non-static context, meaning that instance specific things, instance block, instance variable, instance methods. Okay, that is instance method or instance block. Okay, so we can access static members from non-static context, no issues. But we cannot so static context directly. It's important. Directly we can access. So directly, and object is not required. Okay, but we cannot access instance members from the static context without what? Without an instance or object. Okay, this is very important note. Okay, so pay attention. We can access static members from the non-static context, but we cannot access instance members from the static context directly. You need an instance. All right, so now you can see, just you can play with this. You can see the values. So I'm a static block 0. Okay, I'm a static block 0. Where is the static block? So here, and then another static block. So when it goes here and printing, it is already incremented because it's a post increment. It will print the actual value, then it goes for increment. So 0, it is printed here at this line, and when it comes to here, it is incremented by 1. So the value is 1. Okay, so static blocks execution is done, then it goes to main method, and it will again print y value. By the time, even this post increment also applied, so the y value becomes what? 2. The y value becomes 2. Right? So then after I'm calling m2 method, and I'm calling m2 method, the flow comes to here, static method. Again, it's going to print y value. So here anyhow I'm not incrementing anything, still the value would be what? 2. Still the value is what? 2. After that, I'm creating an instance. When you are creating instance, the instance blocks are going to execute. So x value, what is the x value? By default a 0. It's going to print a 0. Then it increment its value by 1. When it goes to the next instance block, the value will be 1. Then again I'm calling m1 method. So m1 method is instance method. Here I'm calling it. So it comes to m1 method. Here it is going to print the x value. What is the x value now? 2. Here it's already incremented by 1. So it prints 2 and it increments the value x again. Okay. So here I'm printing y value, which is going to be 3. And after this, again, I'm printing x value further, even that is also incremented by 1, and it will print 3. Okay, so we just try to understand the accessing the variables into the static context and non-static context, static variables and non-static variables. All right, all good. Okay, now let me have another static variable. Static variable the instance variable here. Okay, I have another set of instance variable and so can I initialize this variable b in my static block? Say here, this is okay. This is a method right now. Static block. I wanted to initialize the b value with 100. Can I do this? Can I do this? So it is accessible, right? Can I access a here by any chance? No, I cannot, because a is instance variable and this is a static block, so you cannot access that. So I'm initializing my b value here. Can I initialize my a value in my instance block? A value is 50 or something. So can I do this? Yes. So now run this and run this. Okay, so what are the values? What are the values it is printing? So I never printed a value, b value, so that's the reason you don't see any output. So I'm printing a value here, so a value, and I wanted to print b value. Okay, I wanted to print b value, so b value plus b. Okay, see, so main method is a static context, so a is the instance variable, so you cannot access it. So how do we access it? Object dot or variable. So run this, so you can see the values initialize. So you can initialize your variables in appropriate blocks. Okay, so hope this gives enough clarity. Differences between the static and okay instance blocks. Okay, static and instance blocks. So if you look at this quick review of it, so static block, we can define the static blocks using the static keyword, just a block. We can also create instance block. How do we create instance block? Just brackets, that's all. This is what instance block. Okay, so this is instance block. So instance block, we can define any number of static blocks, any number of instance block, no issues. Okay, so order of static blocks execution from top to bottom, even order of instance blocks execution is also from top to bottom. Order always is blocks execution from top to bottom. All right, so these instance blocks, when these instance blocks execute, so that's another important point. Okay, so the instance blocks executes automatically. Instance blocks executes automatically when the object is created. So this automatically executes when static blocks executes when the class is loading, and instance blocks executes only when the object is created. If object is not created, then this will never execute. Okay, so that's about instance blocks. And we have static methods and instance methods. Okay, we can define static methods, we can define instance methods. Okay, we can call all the static methods without class name if you're accessing from the same class. If you're accessing from out of the class, then you need the class name, all right, so you can access, if you want to access instance methods or instance members, you need instance, that's of course. Okay, and important thing is we can access static members from the non-static context directly. You don't need object, you don't need class if you're from the same class, but you need an object if you want to access the instance members from the static context. Okay, this is another important point. Hope all this all of these are clear. Let me know if you have any doubts. All good, perfect. Okay, so the next thing is about the static classes. Okay, so probably let's look into that tomorrow. Okay, so let's take this slowly because we should not get confused with this stuff. Okay, so we'll continue the static classes tomorrow. Okay, static classes, and further to that we'll go ahead with inheritance rules. Okay, that's all for today.